For fuck's sake, Tabby, these kids aren't living on this ranch because of money. They're living here because of you. East of Wall was written and directed by Kate Beecroft. Ah, not the Beecroft! Not the Beecroft! Ah! Ah! Sorry, can't help it. If anybody has B in some part of their name, I have to channel Wicker Man. It is the law. What's also a law is riff tracks, because I could say, not bad, a B. I just wanted a B with your report card. Let's get serious, because East of Wall actually is a serious slice of Americana, not to be confused with the upcoming movie called Americana starring Sydney Sweeney. I'll check that out when it hits theaters. This was the AMC mystery movie, and this actually has gotten quite a bit of attention on the film festival circuit, where it basically just takes place at a South Dakota horse farm near the Badlands, which look beautiful, but don't look like they'd be a whole lot of fun to go into. But I will say that the Badlands, as far as shots and everything, there's a couple pieces of narration that talk about, like, how it's going to move the story along and everything. And this horse farm, 3,000 acres, is headed by Tabitha Zuniga, and she has a bunch of teens on this farm, some that are her own, some that have come along because the parents are struggling, but mainly it is about Tabitha and her daughter, Portia, who are more alike than they want to admit. And basically stands two actors. Everybody is playing fictionalized versions of themselves. This is docufiction, meaning, yeah, they're non-actors, and some parts have been changed to protect the impotent. I think that's how that phrase goes. And in all seriousness, they basically are just telling the story, letting it unfold, and there are some raw emotional moments, especially in the third act. And despite the fact that these people are classified as non-actors, there are actually some pretty good performances in this. Now, since this got so much attention on the film festival circuit and ratings have been pretty good, I was excited to see how this was. So, how is it overall? I will say that there are a lot of strengths to this movie, especially for, a cast of virtual, like, not experienced actors. Sans two people. There is Roy Waters, Scott McNairy, who was in Argo, 12 Years a Slave, and was also in the most recent Speak No Evil. That's where I recognized him from. Check out my reviews of the 2022 and the 2024 Speak No Evils. So anyway, there's also Jennifer Ellie, who plays Tracy. She was in Zero Dark 30. She's actually been in quite a few things, but really it is about Tabitha and Portia's relationship with some other characters that come and go, and it does have a naturalistic feel to it. It does just let the story progress gradually, and there are some really neat little shots. I like the cinematography. I thought there was some good use of, the bond that people can have with horses, especially Tabitha, who can communicate with horses, unlike, anybody really in that area. And she does actually seem to genuinely want to do good, but she's headstrong. Not like Trapped, because Tabitha actually seems like a good person, unlike the band Trapped. If you get it, you get it. But Tabitha is trying to pick up the pieces and keep her farm going, her acreage going, because her husband, John, passed away. We find out, more details about that in the third act, which I'll get to in spoilers. But really, it is about just, can Tabitha and Portia basically come to an understanding about things? And I will say Portia delivers a very good performance, so there are a lot of strengths to this. Realistically, there's a whole lot to recommend about this, and I do recommend you check this out. However, my issues have to do with some of the characters that are just introduced and seemingly forgotten about. There are some snapshot moments that look cool, but I think maybe were almost unnecessary. There's the TikTok stuff, which is how they're going to get to try and sell horses and show the teens doing tricks. And I gotta say, there's like just the story with the character Roy, and I understand where they were going with it, but there was absolutely no stakes with that. No stakes at all. And I'm not saying they needed to drama it up like Hollywood is known to do, but that is one, that's one glaring thing about it. But it does pick up, and there's a campfire scene later on that I'll talk about that is really, really moving and actually bump this up a fucking star. Because I was ready to give it a modest recommendation, but that scene alone And the carry and everything and the open rawness of that and a few other scenes looking back on, especially as I was driving home, that absolutely makes East of Wall more than worthy of recommending, at least in my personal opinion. Now, is it one of the best films of the year? No, that's not something I would say, but it is certainly one of the biggest surprises of the year. And as things go on, we do see some building and some breaking down of walls, east of walls, as it were. And we do see Tabitha realizing, being headstrong, can only get her so far, but also Portia realizing that she can be headstrong too. It's nice that this feels natural as far as not, it doesn't feel like sterile. It feels like, something you actually could see happening, whether South Dakota, Portland, why you'd want to go to Portland, I have no idea, or Washington State, which is where I live. You could see a relationship like this between mother and daughter playing out. But I'm going to get into spoilers in theaters if you want to check it out. So 3, 2, 1, and spoilers. So basically, John is no longer there. So I'm somebody else. I kid, of course. He passed away. In the interim, she's trying to keep this ranch going. And there's this one character, Jesse, that his aunts don't really take care of him very much. He lost his parents, I believe him and his sister. And Tabitha, unfortunately, cannot get custody of them due to financial issues. She's making money, but she's not making enough money. That's where Roy comes in. Roy actually offers to buy the land and let them work on the land, but they'd be working for him. Which means he could technically kick them off the goddamn land at any point. So really, the bad land deals did not get left back in the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, or in the Canadian wilderness where Stu Hart had to hunt people and hunt animals and live in a shack. I gotta stop with the random wrestling references because nobody fucking gets them. Besides wrestling fans that are watching this. But I did like the opening of talking about like the family and everything, the family giving gifts or presenting stuff to John's grave. And also you get to see all the pretty horses. You get to see a cat at one point. Animals are fine. It's always good to see animals. A lot of dogs on this goddamn ranch. And really what it just comes down to is, will Tabitha end up selling the ranch to Roy? She doesn't end up selling the ranch to Roy, I do want to say. But how did John die? And that's actually something I think that needs to be mentioned. Because while Roy is trying to almost buy Portia's love because his daughter ended up taking her own life, Tabitha's trying to, basically she's trying to just go forward. And she refused to ride a goddamn horse after that. After John's death, so that's going to factor into the finish of the thing. And Portia is really good at horse riding. And Tabitha is trying to, tame this wild horse, shall we say. And there's a nice little scene a little bit later, but the biggest compliment, or the biggest scene of this that will stick out in many people's minds is the campfire scene. And it's after a while with the mother, or Tabitha's mother, which actually, I thought she delivered a pretty good performance. But she's talking about stuff like what one person talked about it being an abusive relationship, this kind of stuff, and that was pretty haunting. And then the mother talks about how this is pretty tough. That her husband, so Tabitha's father, was cleaning his gun and went off. Well, he's bleeding out. She's pissed off at her daughter, hitting her daughter, and that was pretty haunting. That was actually a pretty dramatic part. But then it really ramps it up because then Tabitha just starts pouring her heart out, essentially, about how John died. He was a Christian. He was a good man. All this stuff, and they fought, as couples do, hopefully, because a war of words are going to happen. Now, words are one thing, and they will hurt, but words, people are going to fight. And as long as you come to an understanding and move on from that and understand for better or worse till death do you part, they are going to love you with every beat of their heart, I swear. Sorry, sorry, sorry. All for one. Nobody gets that reference. The thing is Tabitha is talking, and she talks about how she went out to the truck to try and get John, and they had recommended you doing CPR. He's dead. So every time she would try to give him mouth to mouth, she'd get blood in her mouth. And then the next day, she's going back and picking pieces of his skull out of the back seat of the truck. Nobody should have to go through that shit. I mean, nobody should. Like, that's some haunting shit. That right there, that lone scene. Not that the other scenes weren't good. There were some messy parts, but right there is where that movie earns its recommendation. Because it builds to that, and then it has a conclusion where, but that's just so fucking haunting by Tabitha. So that was an incredible scene. That was really, really good shit. That was worth the 35 minute drive down south to the closest theater to see this. So that was absolutely worth it. Haunting as it is. And then basically, Portia, or Tabitha says that Portia blames her for it. Portia's listening in, and Tabitha kind of ends up yelling at her because she sees that, and because it's a vicious cycle. You had the mother that treated Tabitha the way she did after her husband did what he did and all that, and that was accidental. But this guy was intentional. And yeah, it was pretty haunting. And then Tabitha decides to ride. There's been this running theme of like auction, people betting on, or people auctioning off horses and getting money and everything. And as long as they get the money, as long as they keep getting good money and they get more, they get some higher, pays for these horses, they'll be able to keep the farm. She basically tells Roy, you can't buy my life, you can't buy my daughter's life, you can't buy our lives. I appreciate what you're trying to do, but no. I personally would have let him have 1,000 acres or whatever and let him sublet that and everything. And he probably could have made some money, but I digress. She's a strong, independent woman that don't need no man, but there is a man named Clay that wasn't just the stepfather, he was the father that stepped up. And on that note, the farm actually was left to the son Stetson, because it's easy for you. Nobody will understand that. I'm going to just basically come up with the finale here that they won 20 grand on one horse, and then they were having more success. And there it is, happy and wrapped up in a bow somehow. So yeah, that's East of Wall right there. It gets a B+. It gets a recommendation. Pretty strong recommendation. Again, if that campfire scene had been as powerful as it was, it would have been like a C+, and it would have been much lower on the star rating. But I did put up a Letterboxd review, so check that out. And check out East of Wall. Give it a shot. Let me know what you thought. So, anyway, like, share, subscribe, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Rentland. Until we meet again, happy trails to you.